What's going on, everyone? We are back with another ASC YouTube video, and I'm here with Kurt today because, well, something happened to Kurt's team, the Washington Wizards, that he has something to talk about, and he has a lot to say. Kurt, do you want to break the news?
Yeah, so in all honesty, I didn't, because obviously the whole rumor of Westbrook and Wall being traded surfaced the media around 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit later. I obviously at the time was like, I don't really want Westbrook. I don't think he puts us over the edge. I don't think he makes us a deep playoff contender. And it's basically the same contract as John Wall. And I didn't want to throw in anything else. I think if you're looking at it from a straight up player perspective, I would take Russ over Wall, but it was the whole, what are you going to throw in? So I'll get to that later. But I said I didn't really want Russ, and then we fast forward 2 or 3 weeks later, and I didn't think it'd actually be done. I kind of thought it'd be one of those things where it's brought up, and Shams brought it up, and I thought it'd kind of just slither away, but it's came up, and it is official. The Washington Wizards have traded John Wall and a 2023 protected first-round pick for Russell Westbrook, and my initial reaction was what I felt the same exact way 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was pretty upset by it. And I think people who aren't in the DC sports world, I don't think they understand how much Wall means to the fan base. He's not just, everyone obviously automatically assumes that we aren't a huge fan of him because of his injuries and because of how much money he's taking. But if you look at what he's done for just DC as a whole, and obviously the Game 6 shot against Boston and just other memorable moments, he's been on this team for 10 years. And in the 2010 NBA lottery, where we weren't even projected to get the first overall pick, I think we had like a 1% chance of getting it. And we actually landed up getting the guy. And obviously John Wall out of Kentucky was that guy and was projected to have this amazing career, and he has in the NBA. So that's sad, obviously, coming from a Washington fan, letting that go, letting that piece of history go, because there are some memorable moments, especially with him and Beal. But we take on now Russell Westbrook, and Russell Westbrook obviously was with OKC. He was with Houston for a season. And I know we've talked about this on countless podcasts and YouTube videos, how Russell Westbrook, they traded a lot to get him in Houston, but we could tell after one season it really wasn't going to work out, especially with the pairing of James Harden. So they kind of had a decision to make if it was going to be Russ that was traded, Harden that was traded. I know Sully thought it was going to be just Harden, but I think
that turned out to be way wrong.
I think he's wrong, but that's not the only time he's wrong. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm pretty upset by the move, but when looking at it, I guess from an offensive standpoint, like we do have Westbrook, we have Beal, we have Denny Avdija coming in, Hachimura, we have Bertans. There's a lot of good offensive talent, but the thing and the problem that's been mounting our team for seasons has been our defense. And it's going to be terrible for next year, and it's going to be terrible for years to come if this roster remains intact. So it's going to be a huge question of, is that offense going to be so dominant to where the defense doesn't matter to a high extent? So while I'm excited to have Westbrook, this guy who's flashy, he is exciting, he's done, obviously, he's a
MVP.
well talked about,
Yeah.
his MVP, and he's a well talked about player in this league. You leave that part of history on Washington and he's gone, and you can't help but be a little upset by that fact.
Westbrook is an upgrade, obviously, because
Yes.
we don't know what Wall's going to be. He hasn't played basketball in 2 years because I don't remember the exact injury he had 2 years ago. Was it that he had 2 years ago, and then he tore his Achilles tripping in the shower a year ago. Westbrook, we know what he is. The thing that's most noteworthy is he's going to take the ball out of Beal's hands, where I feel like John Wall complemented Beal a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that you're doing this trade is on the precipice that Wall's contract is so bad. It looks like one of the worst contracts in the league, obviously, because of his injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a supermax, so obviously you're paying him a lot of money, but when you have these injuries, it completely derails the look of that contract. John Wall, I think he's going to fit nicely next to James Harden if he is what he used to be, but we don't really know what that's going to look like because he hasn't played in 2 years, but he's a lot more of I'd rather have 12 assists than 20 points kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he is a great playmaker for his teammates. And Wall was one of my favorite players years ago, but, you know, he used to be an all-star, and like you said, against the Celtics in that series, he was great. And he made it the second round, and IT, you know, went off. Similar to the Westbrook for Paul trade, it's just bad contract for bad
It's
contract.
like, if you look at the two contracts, they're like, in all honesty, nearly identical.
Well, yeah, they're both super maxes, I'm pretty sure.
So, I mean, and it's one of those things where, like, in order to get rid of a Wall, or if you, in this instance, want a Westbrook, you're going to have to obviously give up that contract to take on the same contract.
I will ask you this. Do you believe that Washington, because I'm pretty sure we can set the 7 teams in the East as playoff locks, not including injuries, obviously, because that's a wild card factor. It's Milwaukee, it's Boston, it's Toronto, it's Brooklyn, it's Philadelphia, it's Indiana, and it was, what's the other one I'm missing?
Miami.
How do I forget Miami? But those 7, I think those are the locks. And would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I would.
Do you think Washington is the favorites to get the 8 seed now? Because you've seen what Atlanta has done, spending crazy this offseason.
Yes. And even if you look at Charlotte, I mean, there's a couple pieces that all will work out. I would say yes, though, because even though people want to discredit and look at some of the things Westbrook isn't doing well, he still is a great player, and he's definitely going to be really good in Washington, per se. And people forget, I mean, Bradley Beal, talk about an all-star snub. I mean, incredible player. You know, I had to throw that in there.
Of course.
He's incredible. And, I mean, Washington, when you look at it, from a roster standpoint, it's really not terrible, and I do think that we could end up getting the 7 or the 8 seed. But like you talked about, the NBA just has so many loads of great teams, especially on the Western side. But when you're looking at it, even on the Eastern Conference side, you have Charlotte, who, I mean, added a Gordon Hayward. I know that contract's huge, but he's going to be an upgrade at that 3 position. You have LaMelo Ball with Devontae in the backcourt. It's going to be fun. You have Atlanta, who is just going all out, and I mean, well, who knows what's going to happen there. And then you have a couple teams where obviously they're not projected to go into the playoffs, but who knows with the NBA? It's a very unpredictable league. So I would say I do think there's a good chance we end up with the 8th seed. It's just weird because it's like you trade for Westbrook, and obviously if you trade for Westbrook, you're not in a, I guess, rebuilding stage or like building around kind of Beal stage.
Yeah, you're trading a pick. You're not going
right.
For
you're kind of going
obviously.
Like all out in this instance. But what's the ceiling for this team? Because I don't think there's really any chance we go to like even the Eastern Conference Finals. There's too many good teams in the East to where that's really possible.
I don't see a high ceiling for this Wizards team. No offense.
I don't either, and that's why I'm kind of upset by it. And no discredit to Westbrook whatsoever, but I've kind of said in the past, I don't see Westbrook as a guy who can really lead you to the promised land. As bad as that sounds, like, and I think Beal can, if that makes sense.
I think he's more of a second option, Beal, like a high-end second option on a contender. But Westbrook, I'm very hypercritical of Westbrook. And if you listen to Highlighted, all of us are. We all are. And we all were very sick of his shit after the postseason. We're like, this dude is weird and confusing. And when he requested the trade, we're like, okay, you have no value essentially, and you got traded for a dead contract essentially. And I guess let's switch over to Houston, because we haven't really talked about Houston at all.
Yeah.
They're in a very interesting spot because apparently James Harden wants out, and Russell Westbrook also wanted out.
Let me ask you before we go on with it. Do you think Harden will be traded before the season starts?
No chance.
Do you think it's going to happen during the season?
No. I think this trade solidifies that I don't think he'll get traded during the season. I think it'll be next offseason if it were to happen. I think reason being is Brooklyn has taken their hands out of the race. They didn't make a move for Drew Holiday. I saw a report that they very much consider Karras as a very vital part of their team, along with
Which
KD
is fair.
and Kyrie. Yeah,
I
I love Karras. So good on them for not wanting to trade him for Drew Holiday, and I'm very happy they didn't because I got Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
So if they feel that way, and James Harden, they don't want to trade for James Harden now at the fact, and Houston's asking price for him is sky high, which obviously is fair.
Yeah.
It seems like that trade's not going to happen now. And I think that's the only team that could really make a move for him. But also Philadelphia, I feel like, there's the connection there with Daryl Morey. But I just don't see Ben Simmons getting traded mid-season. I feel like they're going to wait out a year to see if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid with this new retooled roster can still work with Daryl Morey. And also, they just trade for John Wall. And John Wall and Ben Simmons it doesn't work, if you ask me. It does not work. So I think this trade basically solidifies that we're trying to appeal to you all. And we're going to make this offense predicated around you because, their new coaching hire, Steven Silas, he built that whole offense around Luka Doncic. And Luka plays similar style to James Harden. And I just think that offense is going to be awesome this year. But I don't see Houston as a contender. What do you feel like their ceiling is? What seed do you think they could get? Do you even think they're a playoff team? I mean, obviously, I think they are. But I'm just saying, what do you think their ceiling is for this season?
I mean, the thing is, I keep in the back of my mind, I really don't think anyone, especially out of the West, is going to beat the Lakers again, just because of the amount of upgrades they have made. So I would say their ceiling is around second round, maybe, with a big maybe, Eastern Conference Finals. And here's the thing, because while John Wall might be a better fit in Houston, I think we talked about this earlier, but I think people don't understand, Westbrook, I still think, is the better player. And it's going to be interesting to see if the fit with Wall means a lot more than the talent of Westbrook. So that's a question that I keep in the back of my mind. But from a seeding standpoint, maybe a 5 seed.
Really depends on how John Wall plays and how Boogie plays, because we haven't seen Boogie play in a year as well. It really depends on those two guys, and those are really wild card players to put around James Harden. So I honestly don't think the situation with Harden is going to get better. I think it's just going to kind of teeter off as the season goes on, and then next year we'll probably see an end to that era.
It's sad because I've said this countless time on the podcast. So you go back to was it 2018, 2017 when they were one game away from making the finals and everything
Chris Paul, his injury.
Yeah, and it literally looked like I don't want to say an incredible future, but at least for years to come, they'd be able to contend, and they've really fell short of that. And I don't know, it's sad. It's not like the first round pick is next year. It's in 2023, which would be, I think it'd be after Wall's contract is up. So
yeah, and also all the other moves they've made have been rebuild oriented,
Yeah.
They traded Rocco for 2 picks. I don't know why they would trade, if they're trying to keep Harden, keeping Rocco makes so much sense. A player that complements their team, even if you're not doing small ball, he makes sense to keep. I mean, which
is why, and we said this, sorry to interrupt, but we said this on many podcasts, we thought Houston is now in a sense where they kind of have to blow everything up. With the whole rumors that Westbrook and Harden, both of them could be out, we thought that the narrative would be kind of pushing to that. Mm-hmm. But now that you trade for a John Wall, it automatically cancels any idea that you have towards.
Yeah, I like the trade in a vacuum if Wall works out, as a healthy Wall. I think he complements Harden well. But in the context of the entire situation, it's a rebuild-oriented trade as well as a let's last-ditch trade.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this with NFL trades, but you don't always have to have a winner and loser, but I feel in this sense, they're kind of both losers.
I'd say Houston's a winner in the sense that they're getting a pick, I guess, but the pick isn't that crazy good. Beal and Westbrook turn out to be great. I mean,
let's hope
the picks were then the pick's nothing. Or
Yeah.
if Beal gets traded, or like if it doesn't work out and Beal ends up getting shipped, sorry to bring up the negative.
Whoa.
Well, I'm just saying it's so protected that you're never gonna get it in that range.
Yeah, right.
So it's just a very odd trade. It's like I said earlier, it's a rebuild oriented trade covered up as a like let's help out James Harden trade. And that's kind of what it seemed like for all of Houston's other moves in this offseason. Do you have any last thoughts?
I don't, and it's going to be interesting, but the good news is in 20 days, NBA's back, and we'll have a better understanding of this trade and how both teams are.